Clay Porter walked into the showroom like he'd just crawled out of a desert. His boots, caked with dust from miles of travel, clunked heavily against the polished floor. His shirt, faded from years of hard work and sun, hung loosely on his frame. If anyone had seen him that day, they'd have thought he was just another mechanic or maybe a rancher, the kind who couldn't afford more than a tank of gas, let alone a luxury car. And that's how he felt like he was in VY Cybele. But the world has a funny way of showing us what we're really made of when we least expect it. As Clay stepped in, the heat from outside seemed to follow him. The cool air inside the dealership didn't do much to ease the judgment that came from every direction. People looked at him, quick glances, head-to-toe assessments, and without a word, they already decided who he was. To them, Clay Porter was nobody. Just another poor soul with a rough life and a dusty shirt. They didn't know his story. The salesman, wearing crisp shirts and perfectly pressed pants, continued their chatter in the corner of the showroom. One of them laughed under his breath as he watched Clay. Bet he's just here for the AC. You know the type. But then there was Travis Jennings. Travis wasn't like the others. He wasn't wearing a designer suit or leaning back in his chair, smug with a sense of entitlement. He was dressed simply, sleeves rolled up like he actually worked for a Levi Yang. He had a reputation for being too soft for the hard-nosed world of car sales. But something about Clay caught his eye. He saw beyond the dirty boots, the worn shirt. He saw something that no one else noticed: a man who'd been through the grind, the kind of man who didn't just wander into a dealership for fun. Travis stepped forward, holding out a bottle of cold water. "Hot day," he said with a warm smile. "You look like you've been through it. Let me know if I can help." Clay was surprised. He didn't expect kindness. Not here, not in a place like this. He nodded, quietly accepting the water. "Thanks," he whispered, almost inaudible. He took a sip and, without another word, walked back out the door. Still thirsty, still judged, but not entirely forgotten. Back inside, the salesman laughed again. "You really think he's gonna buy anything? He's probably just here to catch his breath." But Travis didn't laugh. He didn't offer some snarky comment. He just shrugged. Maybe he'll remember kindness when no one else offers it. What the others didn't know, what none of them would ever guess, was that Clay wasn't there to buy a car. He was there to observe, to test them. And what he saw in that showroom made something inside him shift. He was disappointed, but not in everyone, just in most of them. Outside, under the Texas sun, Clay climbed into his old, rusted truck and sat there, staring at the dealership through the rear view mirror. The same boots that had clunked across the showroom floor now tapped slowly against the truck's bumper. In his hand was a piece of paper, folded and crumpled, smelling faintly of engine oil. It wasn't a brochure. It wasn't some fancy advertisement. No, it was something much more dangerous. Something no one expected. It was a certified trust document. A legal paper proving full ownership of one of the largest private automotive holdings in the state of Texas, his father's legacy. His father had built the empire from scratch, engine by engine, deal by deal, handshake by handshake. When his father died, Clay inherited everything. But instead of walking into that showroom like a king with a suit and a Rolex, Clay chose to disappear. He didn't want the world to see him as the son of a billionaire. He wanted to see the world without the privy leg, without the influence. So he became a mechanic, a drifter, a guy who no one noticed. Until today, Clay wasn't here to impress anyone. He wasn't here to buy cars. He was here to test them, to see who would treat him with respect when he didn't have the luxury to buy their attention. And the only person who passed the test was Travis. Clay folded the trust document back into his wallet, started the truck, and drove off into the Texas dust. He wasn't done. Not yet. Back at the dealership, Travis finished his shift, completely unaware that the man he'd offered water to was about to change everything. Hours later, the sound of engines broke the silence. A black SUV pulled into the lot, followed by another. And then another. 10 in total, all gleaming and polished, engines humming like they were synchronized. Each SUV parked neatly, doors opening in perfect unison. And there, in the center of the lineup, stood Clay. No dust, no faded shirt. He was clean, strong, undeniable. He didn't look like a billionaire, but in that moment, he didn't need to. He walked right past the receptionist, who gasped in straight toward Travis. "Can you help me with something?" he asked, voice calm. Travis blinked. "Of course. What do you need?" Clay pointed to the line of cars behind him. I need someone to process payment. Full cash. All 10 of them. Right now. Silence fell. People stared, jaws hanging open. The showroom was suddenly frozen in time. They had no idea who he was, but now they were starting to realize. The man they had mocked just hours earlier now stood before them, a quiet power that none of them could explain. Travis didn't flinch. He didn't ask questions. He just nodded. Right this way, sir. The staff stood there, frozen, their thoughts racing. Where did those cars come from? Who was this man? Why was he here? Travis led Clay to his desk, his hands shaking just a little as he began processing the paperwork. But before he could even type the first number, Clay placed a sealed envelope on the counter. Travis opened it. Inside were certified cashier's checks, each one covering the full price of a luxury vehicle, plus taxes and fees. No tricks, no gimmicks, just raw, undeniable proof. Clay leaned in, speaking low enough for only Travis to hear. Split the commission evenly among every junior employee here. The ones in training. The ones who get ignored. And give the last car to Luis the janitor. Title in his name. Travis stared at him, shocked. You want me to? Clay interrupted with quiet authority. Yes, and I want no one else touching this paperwork, but you. The manager, who had been avoiding the situation, finally approached, nervous and confused. Excuse me, sir, he said. I think there's some misunderstanding here. Clay turned slowly, his gaze cold but calm. I remember what happened earlier. You don't need to explain. The manager, trying to save face, laughed nervously. Well, maybe I can personally assist now. Make things smoother. Clay cut him off, his voice firm. You didn't offer me water. You didn't even say hello. You offered judgment. Keep offering it. But from a distance. This sale is already taken. The manager's face fell, the color draining from his cheeks. He stood there for a moment, speechless, then walked away, defeated. Travis resumed the paperwork, his heartbeat racing, but he didn't rush. There was no need. Everything that needed to happen was happening. Outside, the luxury cars gleamed under the setting sun, each one lined up with precision, a symbol of Clay's quiet power. Luis Medina, the janitor, stood frozen by the back wall. He had worked for years in silence, unnoticed. No one had ever asked his name. No one had thanked him. But now, Clay called him forward. Clay held out the final set of keys, the last car, the one meant not for a client, but for a man who had spent his life cleaning floors. Luis stepped forward, hands shaking. This is yours, Clay said, placing the keys into Luis's trembling hands. Fully paid. Titled in your name. No strings. No conditions. Luis couldn't speak. His mouth opened, but no words came. Finally, he whispered, I clean floors. Clay smiled softly, a hand on his shoulder. And you do it with dignity. That's more than I can say for most. Luis stepped outside, the key to his new car heavy in his hand. The pearl-white convertible gleamed under the setting sun. It was more than just a car. It was a symbol, a reminder that kindness, humility, and respect still had value, even in a world quick to forget it. The dealership, once buzzing with arrogance and judgment, had fallen silent. No one moved. No one knew how to react. And then, as quietly as he came, Clay Porter left. No grand speech. No applause. Just a man who had changed everything without lifting a finger. The next morning, the story went viral. People shared it across social media. News outlets scrambled to uncover Clay's identity. But the man himself? He had already disappeared, as quietly as he had arrived. In the weeks that followed, the dealership changed. The manager who had mocked Clay was replaced, and Luis was promoted, his life forever altered by the kindness of a stranger. Travis, the salesman who had seen through the judgments, became one of the youngest senior sales executives in the company's history. And Clay? Well, his legacy wasn't measured in cars or cash. It was measured in the lesson he left behind. Never underestimate the quiet ones. Never assume kindness is weakness. So, the next time you see someone you might otherwise overlook, remember this story. Because one day, they might just change your life.